Going to bring in our first guest here for the hour in just a few minutes, Gary D. Rodriguez.
So listen, during the day I get various emails and calls, and kind of people solicit me and I solicit them for getting on the radio to talk about their thing. And when I saw this story about telephones and social networking and things like that in the workplace, it really kind of grabbed me, because it made me realize that people are spending a lot of time not doing work when they're at work. And we have a little bit of a different situation, I feel like, here at the radio station, because at any given time, like right now, I'm looking at 3 screens, and 2 of them have some sort of social site on them, partly because we're putting up our information, and then I'm checking this and that, and then we have, the emails over here on the side, and then I have my phone down next to me. And I feel like that's part of the job.
Yes.
But it sounds like this is a part of a lot of people's jobs, and not necessarily by their employer's choice. And so with that in mind, we decided to contact Gary D. Rodriguez, who's the CEO of Peopleistic. They study people, and they have some very interesting study results.
Hi, Gary. Welcome to News Talk 580.
Oh, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Tell me a little bit about what you found. It's almost eye-opening. A lot of people are doing a lot of different things on company time, it looks like. Huh?
A lot of people are doing it. We have like almost 50% using phone and texting, and up to almost 24% admitting that they spend at least an hour a day on personal calls, emails, and text messages. So we really have to look at what that does to the productivity in teams and organizations, because people are also surfing social media, they're surfing the internet, and of course then there's gossip with fellow workers. There's a lot of time that's actually being utilized that is disengaged from what the actual work responsibilities are.
How were you able to compile all this information, Gary?
Research and study and the organizations that we go into, as well as doing some of the information that has been provided from career builders. They did a study actually on hiring professionals across a whole number of different industries earlier in the year, and found out that the number one productivity killer is literally the electronic timekeeper in your pocket or purse. So I found this very, very interesting, because when we go into organizations, it's always about performance, but in a way that is going to capture and endear the workforce to you. Because the more that you engage and invest in your staff, the greater possibility they will engage and invest in the productivity of your organization. So our whole idea is we just got published, actually, a book called Humanistic Business, Profit Through People, Passion, and Purpose. So when you really think about what's going to engage people, a lot of the social media work, a lot of the social media distraction is around being disengaged. So if teams were actually fully engaged in the purpose and the delivery of a product or service to the end user, and they were endeared to the organization, they would be far more engaged than they actually are.
Gary D. Rodriguez is our guest here this half hour on News Talk 580. If you'd like to talk a little bit about technology and how it may be impacting your particular workplace, you can certainly join us. 947-0023. 947-0023. Gary, it used to be that office gossip. They'd meet around the water machine and get their water cup, and then they talk a little bit about what's going on, but it's gone well beyond that now, hasn't it?
Well, technology has changed everything. I mean, if we look at it, we have 5 generations with different values, different life experiences based upon the technology revolution, all colliding in the same workplace, which means that each generation had a very different set of historical experiences that actually shaped the way that they perceive, the way that they communicate, and of course the technology that they use. And this boils down to having 5 sets of sometimes radically different value systems and work ethics coming together into teams, and then management says, work together and be productive. And oftentimes it's quite challenging to actually have all those generational differences of being put forth into one team and have them all get along and be productive together. And technology, as great as it is, also causes a lot of different issues in the people dynamics of teams.
Well, I was just wondering if you had investigated some solutions and how offices and workplaces can be more productive, being that social media and just the whole electronic age, that's part of our business. That's part of most people's business in one way or the other. How do we kind of funnel that into productivity as opposed to time wasting?
That is such a great question. First of all, I think it's multifaceted, the answer. And part of it doesn't have anything to do with technology. Part of it has to do with people's attitudes, their buy-in to what the company stands for, how congruent management is with how they disseminate and brand their particular values through every part of the operation of an organization. When they do it successfully, employees are engaged, they desire to be there, they desire to work for something that's actually, believe it or not, doing good in the world actually is more profitable than analyzing a product and having it being profit before people. It's actually been proven that it's far more profitable to put people before profit, and people become far more endeared, talent retention occurs, your succession planning becomes a no-brainer, and then before you know it, you've got great team buy-in and team performance because you're operating at a higher level than just pushing a pencil or pushing a widget through a factory. It becomes something where people want to be invested in. The more that you invest in your people, the more they invest back in you. I personally think that technology is fabulous as far as streamlining, but it's the abuse of technology based upon the disengagement of staff, and generally because management is disengaged. I mean, think about it for a moment. There's very little consequences that people actually are given through wasting time on social media. It can be monitored. It's important to monitor it. And also, but most importantly, I think I'll jump to, it still is about attitude and being bought in to what the company stands for. And that's a much bigger, more global issue. But at the heart of it, if we're going to look at not just putting a Band-Aid on a lack or loss of productivity in teams, we cannot take out the human equation, which is, are they engaged? Do they believe in what they do? And is this a passion for them? And when it can be a passion for them, based upon being involved in more of a value-driven organization, then you have less time wasting and more productivity naturally.
You're so right. And so to summarize, if you're a manager or a supervisor, some sort of business owner, you can't just say to someone, well, I want you to engage more starting now. How do you help your staff engage more in their jobs?
I think it starts from the top down. They have to stand for something. I mean, I've worked for large engineering companies and turned them into humanistic organizations where with their talent retention and their succession planning, the savings in their profit centers was far greater because it oftentimes takes 3 times a person's annual salary to replace that talent. So when talent is retained, there is actually excess profit. And what this organization did is they would give like a $500 bonus to their staff at the end of every quarter. And what the staff would do with that, this is what they were recommended to do, was to fund like as many UNICEF children as possible with that $500 bonus. The reason for the $500 bonus was to do good in some aspect, some charity of your choice that you desire to donate. And so what began to happen is that the staff began to feel like, the profit that they're actually generating, the excess profit, is going out into the communities that they serve and doing some great work. That has a double benefit back to the organization, because when an organization benefits the customer or the end user or the communities that they serve, it further endears them to the organization, and then there's a steady stream of cash flow because of the loyalty that customers will have for the organization. So it becomes this win-win across all contexts. Staff feel more empowered, company builds their brand power, the end user gets to be benefited, and there is just this endearment that happens through all levels and touch points between the upper management and the end user and all operations.
Gary D. Rodriguez, Peopleistic, with us here on News Talk 580. One of the interesting things I found during your research, Gary, is that people apparently don't want to go on vacations. They don't like vacations. A high percentage of people want to work. Why don't they like going on vacay?
What?
Well,
Wait a minute.
I love going on vacations, to tell you the truth. But I think that there's some interesting stats that I think would be interesting to even look at. Americans work approximately 1,700 hours a year, that's according to the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis. We work more hours than France or Germany. However, the Asian countries like Hong Kong, Korea, Singapore, Taiwan are working a whopping 2,345 hours a year. Now, Americans, as we all know, we don't take long enough vacations or often enough. And I think that there is some adjustments that need to be made there. And why I say that is because there's some new research out, and that new research has been showing some indicators in productivity keys. One is that if people work on a 90-minute, you'll love this, a 90-minute cycle which follows the natural rhythms of the body.
Just recharge the batteries a little, right, Gary?
Absolutely. When you really think about it, I know for myself, always around mid-afternoon, I'll have a drop in my energy. If I take and I shut my eyes and I do a 12-minute or 15-minute meditational / nap, I will come back completely refreshed and I can go way into the evening. But if I don't, I'm sort of dragging throughout the rest of the day. So I think that there really requires for organizations to have a more progressive perspective of how they're going to engage and get productivity out of their teams. And oftentimes, it's about being far more, I will say, practicing more totally human leadership so that we take into account the psycho-emotional issues of our staff. And when we do that, I really believe we'll have greater productivity with our teams.
Well, Gary, thank you so much for joining us here. You're bringing us up to date with a new 21st century mentality when it comes to the workplace.
Well, I think that there's so much more. I could talk to you for hours about the other things that we've discovered in the trenches of what really works.
We'd love to have you come back and we'll talk a little bit more if that's okay with you.
Absolutely, I would love that. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Meantime, Gary, where can folks read about some of this research that you've done? Because it's really interesting.
It's eye-opening stuff.
Yes,
yeah,
it is.
it's good stuff. They can click on to the USA website, which is a .com. It'll go to our world website. So the URL for our website in the USA is peopleistic.us, and that's just the word people with ISTIC.us. You'll get onto that website and you can look at a lot of the material that's there, and we'll go from there. But I would love to come back and talk to you more because I've got lots to say on this subject.
Terrific. And for folks that are looking that up, of course, you wait till after work to do all that research.
Absolutely.
Yes, you have to listen to the show in its entirety.
That's right.
Because now the boss will be watching.
That's exactly right, and you'll be penalized.
Absolutely. You'll go to the sin bin. Hey, Gary D. Rodriguez, thank you for joining us here on News Talk 580.
It's my absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Have a great week, sir.